Sonic Riders oozes style like no other, with its gorgeous character designs, levels, and sleek-looking extreme gear, all being in tandem with some really fun, high skill ceiling gameplay. As someone who grew up playing a lot of skateboarding games, but not really getting into Riders itself till recently, it's been a game I've really looked forward to covering on the channel in terms of what caused the conception of such a unique and iconic racing game that would of course branch out into its own sub-series. Let me tell you, we're going to be going over a ton, from its pre-development shady business practices, development history, concept art, canceled ports, theories, and anything in between. With that being said, join myself and a special guest.
Hello everybody, my name is Nicholas, but it's Nick for short. I am a huge fan of the Sonic Riders series. I've made video essays on almost all of the series at this point, and the original Riders is without a doubt my favorite racing game of all time. So needless to say, I am very excited to be a part of this video. Let's get started, shall we?
As we Sonic speed through the rabbit hole that is the extreme development of Sonic Riders. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of this video, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Sonic Riders Tournament Edition and the Sonic Riders modding community as a whole. The lovely people over at Sonic Riders Tournament Edition, or SRTE for short, were kind enough to help out with this video by sharing some incredibly awesome archive material that hasn't seen the light of day in a very long time, that fortunately we'll be able to dive into throughout this video. SRTE has recently released a major update to the competitive overhaul, that being SRTE 1.4.
This is it!
Boasting a huge amount of new features, their own HD texture pack, tweaks, special surprises, and more. SRTE was founded in 2017 and has the biggest community in and for Sonic Riders, with a whopping 9.1 thousand Discord members in total. There's always things going on in the Sonic Riders competitive Discord, with multiple monthly events, tournaments, speedruns, or just to hang out with other people who enjoy Riders. And speaking of the community as a whole, there's also another stellar overhaul in the form of Sonic Riders DX, which boasts their own competitive scene, with the most recent update being 1.0.1, featuring their own twist on the game, with different balancing, adjustments, and features among many other things. Their Discord, Extreme Gear Labs, is where they also host other major overhauls like Sonic Riders Regravified for Zero Gravity, and the most recently released Sonic Riders X, which is a full-on reimagining of the prior duology in Unity with their own spin on it. Both communities are doing an absolutely amazing job keeping the legacy of the Riders games alive and better than ever. With that being said, grab your extreme gear and X-rank your way over to both the Sonic Riders competitive Discord and Extreme Gear Labs for SRTE 1.4 and Riders DX. Their links are on screen and in the description below.
Wow! Look at that display of overwhelming strength!
A special thank you to SRTE for providing material for this video. So, our story begins all the way back in May of 2003. While mainline Sonic Team USA was slaving away at the release of Sonic Heroes in the coming months, there was a brand new spin-off that was proposed to Sega for the Sonic series. I'd like to give a huge shout out to Did You Know Gaming and their Unseen 64 series by Liam Robertson, as he interviewed the developers of Sonic Extreme back in 2017, which we'll be referencing in this video. I'm only going to be covering the main points pertaining to its connection to Riders, so if you're interested in seeing a whole in-depth 12-minute video solely covering the game's development cycle, if you even want to call it that, I recommend checking their video out. It's an incredible watch. Anyways, at the time of 2003, extreme sports like skateboarding, snowboarding, BMX, and the likes were all the craze, that also extending to video games, with series like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, SSX, and my personal favorite being Tony Hawk Underground, shoutout Thug 1 and 2, being insanely popular. That being said, a small San Diego-based studio named Visionscape Interactive, only being founded by husband and wife Matt and Tammy McDonald in 1997, which by the time of 2003, the company worked on O2 Seablade for Xbox and Tech Deck Bare Knuckle Grind, which was based out of the Renderware engine that also hosted many other big-name games like Pro Skater 3. VSI also had some failed projects in accordance with THQ, but that was due to THQ's financial problems. Visionscape's staff had significant background in animation, and the company's name may actually sound familiar if you saw the Sonic Heroes video, as Sega actually contracted them to do the CGI cutscenes for Heroes before moving to Blur for Shadow. Anyways, since they were working on Heroes and had access to the Sonic IP and its assets, Mark McDonald decided to combine the Sonic IP with their prior experience with the renderware engine from that Tech Deck game to create a prototype over the course of 1 week in May of 2003. This is without Sega's knowledge, of course. This prototype was built on the Xbox with the intent to port to the GameCube and PS2. They chose the Xbox as Visionscape was the most comfortable with the platform, as they essentially retooled the Tech Deck game with the Sonic assets mainly coming from Sonic Adventure 2, as that was the last mainline Sonic game released at this time. VSI had access to everything, making the world look like Green Hill, adding boost pads, rings, sound effects, music, promotional art straight from the adventure games, even having Sonic and Shadow repurposed to ride hoverboards. Once this quick prototype was completed, McDonald then showcased this to Sonic Team USA head producer Yuji Naka, who was incredibly impressed by their work and wanted to make this into a full game. Naka would then request Visionscape to produce a software design description, also known as an overarching outline of the project. It's generally used for recording design info, addressing various design concerns, and showcasing the stockholders, and budget for a now freshly named Sonic eXtreme. Visionscape celebrated as they would send this over believing they had the deal locked down at this point, making it their big break with the company. This is also when they were finishing their work on Sonic Heroes' cutscenes. After the cutscenes were finished and their contracted work with Heroes was completed, communication would come to a screeching halt between Sega and VSI, with Sega not responding at all to the company despite its multiple repeated attempts for interaction. McDonald and his team did not take this personally though, as they just assumed Sega had simply liked the idea, but it just didn't work out. Therefore, eXtreme would unfortunately never come to fruition. Keep this in mind as we move forward in this video though. Fast forward now to 2005, where at this point in the franchise, there had not been an official Sonic racing game since 1997's Sonic R on the Saturn, although it was a stacked year of content with both Shadow and Sonic Rush releasing. Sega and Sonic Team would make an official surprise announcement in the September 2005 issue of Famitsu that a brand new Sonic racing game would be released for the 15th anniversary, called Sonic Riders. Riders was the first to be announced among a slew of games that came in the official celebration for the big number 15, getting unveiled that same week's Friday at the Sega of Japan Tokyo press conference, with rivals Sonic 1 GBA and the big enchilada of 2006 being Sonic 06. But that story is for another time. Switching gears, remember that Sonic eXtreme prototype? Well, after the Riders announcement, Visionscape were quite surprised with how much resemblance this new Sonic Riders game had to their prior prototype. So much so, McDonald believed that Sonic Team took Visionscape's concept before diverging into a different direction. VSI actually considered taking legal action against Sega, but they were informed due to the non-disclosure agreement they signed during Heroes' development, it legally gave Sega ownership of anything VSI made using the Sonic IP. VSI would end up closing in 2006, where the staff were asked to dispose of the development hardware kits at recycling plants. But the eXtreme prototype would prevail, being passed to collectors until ending up in the hands of Proton X Atomic, where on April 29, 2011, he'd share the build with the world on assemblergames.com, along with also posting proof of it onto his YouTube channel. This would then make its way over to Sonic Retro, where speculation of the build was discussed, until Proton himself would comment on the thread on April 30th, saying he played through the whole game along with describing the intricacies of it. The following day on May 1st, Proton would describe how he recently acquired it. He didn't know much about its history, and it sat in storage since 2003. He would then continue to release more information in the thread, including a picture confirming it was him. This caused even more excitement, and some people took it a little too far, like this one guy.
I just bought the Tech Deck game. I am a high school dropout. Also, you are all adopted.
The thread would continue all the way on to 2014, with discussion by Proton and others about the build. It would then go silent until May 6th, 2016, where YouTuber Boreman would bump the thread, showing he had access to the prototype, was making a video on it, and acquired it from Proton X. Both Boreman and Proton were working out deals throughout the years for Boreman to acquire the prototype, as said by Proton himself. I'll link Boreman's original YouTube video in the description, as he goes by PTOP Online on YouTube. He would then upload the demo 2 months later to the thread for download, along with it going on Hidden Palace for anyone to try out. Alright, that's enough about Sonic eXtreme. Now let's start fully talking about Riders. This new racing game would be headed by executive producer Yuji Naka, this being his last fully involved Sonic title from start to finish, before leaving during the production of Sonic 06. Producer Takashi Yuda, who was the character designer for Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and actually designed Knuckles himself in that game, also doing the original character concepts for Knuckles Chaotix, and finally, director, main game designer, and storyboard designer Kenjiro Morimoto, who also worked on Sonic Adventure, Sonic Heroes, and actually in 2020 expressed interest on wanting to create a new Sonic Riders game, although leaving Sega in 2017. If there's any need for a title for a true Sonic Riders 3, hit me up, as I have created the ultimate names for this game. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Sonic Thriders. Okay, maybe we're a fan of that one. Alright. How about Sonic 3 Riders? Thank you. Yes, I know it was very clever. You don't need to tell me. Sega, if you'd like to hire me, my application is in the description. One of the major reasons why this game had such a unique identity and style is because a lot of the familiar faces that were working on the prior games, like Takashi Iizuka, Kazuyuki Hoshino, Hiroshi Nishiyama, and even Yuji Naka, were not really assisting with this project. Speaking of Naka, although executive producer, only really provided the very loose groundwork for the Riders team, as Takashi Yuda commented on in a November 2005 Kikidzu interview. With Sonic Riders, I can't remember exactly what bits Naka gave advice for, but there definitely was some input from him in places and at the beginning. The rest of these Sonic heads had their hands full with different projects, therefore letting this new group carve their own unique identity into the overall franchise, making something really fresh and distinctive from prior. Not to discredit the others' work though. That being said, with making something unique, the Riders team certainly did, as in the words of Yuda in a January 20th, 2006 interview with GameSpy, when asked if there was any influence taken from the prior games in the series, like say City Escape's snowboarding section when making Riders, he said, although that was part of Sonic Adventure 2, we didn't really refer to it when creating Sonic Riders. We aimed at creating a new experience for Sonic this time around, and when you play it, you'll see that Sonic Riders is truly something different and new to the Sonic universe. One of the biggest things that helped set Riders apart from the rest of the Sonic series was the introduction of one of the coolest things to ever grace gaming, being the eXtreme gear. Director Kenjiro Morimoto went in depth with the Japanese Sonic channel regarding the inspiration for the eXtreme gear, the air mechanic, which if you haven't played Riders before, is essentially the fuel for this game, where doing gnarly tricks and just styling on the competition grants you more air to keep racing, and how in the beginning, putting the ideas into a playable format was quite tricky. When I dropped Sonic, who has a high physical ability from the start, into the racing genre, I thought, what would I place him on? It took a long time until I settled it, and continuing to variously imagine such racing development, I was interested in the field called extreme sports, and at that time, Chief Officer Yuji Naka told me about the phenomenon known as turbulence of the kart world during chatting, and by observing those, I was able to go on bringing various ideas together into one form. All the elements, speed sensation, dynamism, and stylish feeling, matched Sonic's image, and the running method of surfing on the wind using extreme gear was done. Atop that, Riders has a really diverse set of level themes, infusing different kinds of settings into one that still feels cemented in the real world in terms of visuals. Yuda also briefly spoke about this in the same GameSpy article of prior, saying how the extreme gear and hoverboards offered flexibility in creating levels compared to your traditional car, since it didn't bind them to say one specific extreme sport like snowboarding or surfing, since well, they could float. Which Morimoto talked in detail about to the Sonic channel, saying that while they were able to be flexible, it was still quite challenging for himself and the team to create settings for these stages, especially the Babylon stages, saying, various courses had appeared at the idea level. I carried out the selection with such themes as future impression, combination of nature and civilization, and journey from real world to parallel universe, and tried to line them up in accordance with color variation. In that sense, the courses of the heroes part were complete, but what I had difficulty in actualizing was the Babylon's part. There was also a time when I was glad to be able to pick out the unimagined original worlds, like a frozen base due to radiative cooling, jungle colored in snowscape due to spores, and the desert of a solar eclipse. Riders was set to release on the GameCube, Xbox, PS2, and a cancelled port which we'll discuss later on in this video. The game would release on February 21st and 23rd in North America and Japan, while being delayed a month in Europe and Australia, along with getting a Windows PC port a few months later in November, most likely to generate more sales with 06 coming out in the same time frame. Now that the development is out of the way, let's get into that concept art. Now, before getting straight into the art itself, we should acknowledge the people who really shaped this into something amazing and as visually stunning, unique, and just awesome that it is. Riders has such a unique blend of genres in terms of visuals, combining science fiction, Arabian Nights, fantasy, and that extreme aesthetic of the 2000s into something amazing. This vision couldn't be done without lead art and field director Hideki Moriya, who started his work with Sega all the way back in 1993 on Shinobi 3 Return of the Ninja Master and directing the art for all 3 Riders games. As lead art and field art director, Moriya oversaw and supervised the vision of the game, of course, also overlooking the concept art too, making this into something so incredibly unique with his influence written all over the game. The GOAT, Yuji Uwakawa, did in fact draw the new designs for the roster, having the role of character art director for Riders. That being said, Uwakawa and Moriya's artistic abilities blended beautifully together for the new character art produced for this game, which we can see exemplified with the heavy charcoal-like outlines, the sketched dark shading, and the new sporty outfits and accessories the characters have. I think this can best be showcased in our first piece of concept art here, of Sonic, Tails, and Amy all kitted out in their prototype Riders gear, seemingly more influenced by the snowboarding side of extreme sports than anything, with the jackets, Tails and Amy's gloves, and Sonic's snowboard-like glasses and thicker gloves. Especially since the boards are all themed for each character and the little logos and stuff on them really give some awesome personality to each board. The boards themselves are a lot bulkier compared to the more sleeker design of the final product. In terms of Sonic's, comparing it to his base board, the Blue Star for example, or Tails and Amy's Yellowtail and Pink Rose, which I actually like the concepts better personally, as they're much more unique compared to the final game, where the design is much tamer, removing the little tails and heart stickers. I definitely think this was a very early prototype for Uwakawa. This is a more traditional Uwakawa Sonic piece in terms of the character design, outlining, and well, everything. Comparing this to our next piece though, which is pretty close to the final design of Sonic, I would definitely assume this has a lot more of Moriya's influence here, as not only is the design much different from Uwakawa's first piece, generally speaking, but Sonic's torso and overall proportions are much longer too. I also want to quickly point out in the prior art too how different the shoes are, especially with Sonic and Tails's, as Tails' whole design is completely changed here, and Sonic, whose shoes in Uwakawa's early prototype resemble a lot more of a blend between the classic and soap shoes, are completely changed in the later Moriya influence design with the larger snowboard shoe-like design. Speaking of the differences in gear, Riders had a whole 5-person team dedicated to designing and modeling the huge variety of gear the game sports. You can thank this awesome group for making these sick designs like the Blue Star 2, or curse things like this combo. Speaking of the character designs, how could we forget the new rival gang to Team Sonic being the Babylon Rouges, consisting of Jet, Wave, and Storm. I absolutely love the goofy, over-the-top, and trolly nature they have, not only with each other, but also their interactions with Team Sonic. Like that one time Wave destroyed Tails.
Well, I never imagined anyone would enter the race with such a piece of junk. Thanks, though. It was good for a laugh. See ya, shorty.
In terms of their inception though, it did interest both myself and Nick with how the dev team exactly came up with this new set of characters.
In preparation for the game's upcoming release, GameSpy interviewed Takashi Yuta, a producer for Sonic Riders, about the game and the franchise in general. One interesting quote from Yuta when asked about the Babylon Rouges characters was, quote, "We thought about having air pirates for Sonic rivals, so that's why we created bird characters," end quote. This is so interesting to me because it alludes to the true nature of the Feathered Fiends. With Sonic being the fastest fastest character on the ground, it only makes sense to look to the skies for a worthy rival. And the pirate angle was developed very creatively with the extraterrestrial origins of the Babylon Rouges and the mythos it brought to the series.
Man, the idea of air pirates is so cool, and I can definitely see that was what they were going for, now knowing the background. While unfortunately no alternative designs were shown off to the public, we did in fact get our first full look at concept art for both Wave and Storm and Riders, thanks to the Team Sonic Racing 30th Anniversary art book. Huge shout out to Smooth Gamer DeDeDe, aka the TNT Gamer 64 on Reddit, for not only showcasing these images of the book, but also being kind enough to reach out and send me these images for the video. Anyways, I'm not going to touch too much on Jet here, as we got a lot more to cover for him, but overall for the Babylon Rouges, these designs must have come quite late in their character's development process, as they are completely one-to-one to their final designs. I don't really have much to say on these, but figured it would be cool to show off nonetheless. Although, what would be really cool is one day we get some art for their proto boards. Who knows? Anyways, let's talk in depth about the golden boy of this game, Jet the Hawk.
Ah, the dirt suits you so well. Ugh.
Jet the Hawk is definitely one of my favorite characters in the entire series, and one of the reasons for that is due to his stellar design. I went in depth on how Jet's final design is a perfect mirror to Sonic's in my original Riders video, but in summary, his color scheme being an inverted version of Sonic's and his silhouette being strikingly similar are undoubtedly what sell the character. They visually portray his relation to Sonic and quickly define who he is at a glance. The reason I mention this is because while looking at the character's concept art, we can see visually how Jet grew into the character we know and love today.
Yeah, I agree. It is really cool how Jet's color scheme is an invert of Sonic's. Another thing that I thought was pretty neat was the similarities between Jet and Shadow in both Riders and Sonic Adventure 2, as Sonic's rival of course, and how they both visually build up each character as having a notch above Sonic. Of course, Riders to a lesser extent, since it is a lot more comedic in tone. Two big examples of this I noticed were of course in SA2, the infamous Green Forest fight where Shadow is high above Sonic, talking down to him, which is mirrored in the cutscene before Green Cave in Sonic Riders, which instead of Shadow is Jet, taking the high ground in a similar fashion. Another one being the iconic scene from SA2, with Shadow saying,
"It all starts with this. A jewel containing the ultimate power."
This being reflected in Riders in the cutscene after the Sand Ruins race, where Jet cheats his way to victory, holding the key to Babylon high above his head with the Chaos Emeralds activated around it, in a triumphant stance of power, towering over Sonic, much like Shadow in SA2, holding the yellow Chaos Emerald above his head, also towering over Sonic. Anyways, let's get cracking into that Jet concept art and our first two concept designs. Nick, that's all you.
The first design is a weasel. Not only does the obvious difference in species create an instant contrast between this and the final design, but the animal choice itself is honestly quite puzzling. A lot of Jet's accessories were borderline finalized, at least by this point in the design phase, with his flame pattern, chest hair, goggles, boots, and gloves being semi-consistent across all of these prototype looks. But back on the topic of the weasel. Typically, weasels are portrayed as pathetic, groveling creatures, which leads me to believe that perhaps initially the audience was supposed to laugh at Jet and not with him like in the final game.
By the way, all of these concept pieces for Jet were done by Yuji Uwakawa. Speaking of Jet and his design here, he would have only joined company with Fang or Knack the Weasel, as the only weasels in mainline canon. I gotta say though, I really do like the look of the design, as he has that more pirate look with the bandana tied around his head, atop the long tail he's got. It's a pretty neat design.
The second design is that of a fox. The ears and mohawk are the design's most defining features, but the two long stretches of fur are also quite distinctive. This was clearly where the design was beginning to focus more on the aerodynamics of the base animal's appearance. Considering this is a fox, I think the distinctions made to differentiate this look from tails are commendable, but this didn't really suit the character in my opinion. Now we start getting into some really interesting deviations of the final look. The third design here is Jet portrayed as a hawk, but with a very different look. This being the first anthropomorphic bird in the series' modern style, the compromise of arms and wings being one and the same is a pretty cool idea, but doesn't flow with the rest of the series' character designs, so this being ditched was probably for the best. The feathers on his head I feel were way too similar to Knuckles' dreadlocks, and I'm very thankful that this was cut from the design. Now, let's stop beating around the bush. Let's all acknowledge how weird his feet are. I can admire the want to give the Babylon Rouges more design aspects exclusive to their species, but the beak used in the bird designs gave the team an individual look no other designs in the series had, and I think that does more than enough. The fourth look is very much a continuation of the third prototype design, with the feathers fully adjusted to their final look, more experimentation on the flame patterns, and another shoe overhaul. Two other pieces of art I want to point out are these two sketches of Jet here. Although unfortunately the full art isn't in frame, what is here is simply gorgeous. In fully colored, it would have made for some of the best looking artwork the Sonic Riders series had ever seen. The poses are incredibly dynamic and have a larger-than-life cinematic feeling. I wish these were finished, or at least get released someday in full. And in the semi-final design, there is one difference I wanted to point out, and that's that Jet's patterns are black instead of the final design's darker green. This concept art is simply incredible. Not only is the art great for preservation purposes, but it also gives us fans a glimpse into the behind-the-scenes growth of Jet and his evolution as a character throughout his design. I can't thank Sega enough for releasing these fantastic concept illustrations.
Atop the previously mentioned comparisons of Shadow and Jet, there's even more outside the game, as much like how we discussed in the Shadow and Rouge video. Shadow is essentially Shiro Miyakawa's baby, where he really was able to understand on a deep personal level the character he was writing for, making him into an excellent character that was portrayed in SA2. The same goes for Kenjiro Morimoto, with Jet being his baby. As Morimoto delved deep into Jet, his motives, and what drives his personality, stating, "Jet is a being who makes Sonic's pride awakened. That is the motive of Jet. Similar to Sonic, he has pride with regard to speed, and he is bad but innocent somewhere. I performed the characterization in which the players would have empathy for Sonic as well as Jet. The childish emotion, hateful expression, and others that Jet shows lets us vicariously recall and reflect on our own childhood when we hated to lose." Jet was always a character I didn't know much about due to my inexperience with the Riders series. So, being able to play them and really see why he's such a fan favorite is great. I find it incredibly interesting and honestly refreshing that the developers, and Morimoto specifically, took great care with the characters, their characterizations, and really making the cast their own. A perfect example being taking that wacky childish rival archetype that Jet has on the surface and giving him layers aptly suited for this kind of game's tone, which Morimoto was able to succeed in, much like other fan favorites with Miyakawa and Shadow's introduction and characterization in SA2. It really is something awesome to see. Now, one of the coolest things that was shared with the public in terms of the Sonic Riders concept art is definitely the storyboards of the opening animated cutscene. While from the Riders development team, director Kenjiro Morimoto and Hiroshi Miyamoto are credited as the storyboard designers, as they probably helped develop the storyboards and provide reference sheets, but did not actually animate the intro, as that was actually outsourced to the one and only Production IG. Production IG is a Japanese animation studio that has worked on so many well-known projects over the years. Some I found interesting were Ghost in the Shell, Tales of Symphonia, Batman Gotham Knight, Star Fox Zero: The Battle Begins, and one of the episodes of the upcoming Star Wars Visions TV show. Production IG's Rider Squad was headed by animation director and storyboard designer Itsuru Kawasaki, along with animation character designer and key animation supervisor Kyuji Asano, along with the rest of the 26+ membered team that made this intro what it is today. By the way, these storyboards throughout are pretty much one-to-one to the final intro, so I'm only going to really point out the neat things I noticed while comparing them. Anyways, let's get started with the first two panels, which is a one-to-one of the beginning panning shot of the character's shoes, which then focuses on Sonic. What I absolutely love here is that on the right of the storyboard, you can see the little opening lyrics of Sonic Speed Riders, and which exact frame Production IG wanted to match when the Sonic Speed line kicks in. Also, Sonic's smirk here takes his whole face up. Of course, this is just a rough sketch, but I found it kind of amusing. The next panel is nothing different at all really, just the gang hopping on their gear, which was reflected in the final one-to-one. Moving on to the two next panels, for panel 3 here on the left, it's actually a tad different compared to the final, as in the storyboard it has Jet and then Wave following him down riding the wall, but in the final, the order is reversed with Jet following Wave. In terms of the storyboard itself, I just love this full sketch of Jet here. He looks super dope, and I kind of found it funny they gave him the more circular goggles compared to his final counterpart. Panel 4 here on the right is not different at all, as the final intro animation just illustrates what the storyboard shows, with the rest of the roster meeting the Babylon Rogues at the bottom, with that gorgeous waterfall of color behind them. Moving on to panel 5 and 6 though, panel 5 on the left here showing off that sick color wave the gang is surfing on, and finishing off with that same close-up of Sonic. I just love the aesthetic of this intro so much. The only difference here being in the storyboard, he's got this huge goofy smile on him, while in the final he's just sporting a smirk. Panel 6 on the right here is really hard to see, but it does seem it's fast forwarding quite a bit to where Sonic is flying through those concrete corridors down on the street level of the city. I say this because of the heavily sketched walls and Sonic turning the corner on the 4th panel down here. Much like this frame in the final intro. It's really hard to tell though. The final panel here is close to the end of the animation. It's also, again, really tough to see what's going on, but it seems this is outlining closer to the end where both teams are racing in the tunnel, leading to the finish line and Tails gets knocked off his board and Sonic saves him. Overall, this animation is freaking gorgeous, and being able to see the storyboards is just so cool.
Interestingly enough, we were able to find some original test renders of a couple different backgrounds from the fully CGI cutscenes. These were created by OK Studios, who make CGI renders and animation for commercial use, and these are some stellar renders if I do say so myself. The first is Metal City, with a borderline final look to it with some fantastic lighting and lots of glossiness to the metal, adding to the futuristic vibe. Here's one piece that looks largely untextured, so maybe this was focusing on the architecture before the look was finalized. Similarly, there's an untextured piece of Babylon Garden here showing off the ruined architecture, and I must say, the detail is impeccable. As for the rest of the renders, they're just simple shots of Babylon Garden, which, although basic, truly showcase the beauty and detail put into the model and texture work, especially whenever you consider how little you actually see of the garden in the in-game cutscenes.
Now, if you thought all the stuff we went over was cool, oh boy, we are just getting started. Huge shout out to the SRTE team for being kind enough to not only archive, but share with us the whole OG 2005 Riders website. Guys, no joke, there is so much cool shit in this thing, along with things that haven't seen the light of day since, well, this website went down back in 2006. To say I was having a Sonic nerd aneurysm when I saw this originally would be an understatement. SRTE will be reposting the archives from this website when the new SRTE website launches with 1.4, so make sure to check that out. While there's an incredibly cool amount of stuff from this website itself, Nick and myself are going to focus more on the things we found from the website while showing off the rest while talking, as if we went over every single picture, well, we'd be here for 2 days. Anyways, once again, huge thank you to SRTE for reaching out, and let's hop right into it. While it may have seemed that there wasn't too much regarding the storyboards when we first went over them, those storyboards actually came into the public knowledge thanks to the official Riders website. And what if I told you, we got even more awesome animation related images detailing even more about Production IG's intro. Huge shout out to SNA999, a member of the Discord, who speaks fluent Japanese and was kind enough to translate some excerpts from this website for us for the video. His Twitter and YouTube are in the description, make sure to check him out. In this section of the website, they briefly discuss the process from Production IG, saying how they are most well known for doing OVAs and such, generally talking about character layouts, sketches and such, along with discussing the processes of getting the proper character angles for the opening animation, timing the angles, and going over things like the character sheets and animation cells. Anyways, I'll let Nick delve deep into what he found interesting about this. Nick, you want to take it away?
Gladly, Eldarin. Probably my favorite discovery we made in the research phase of this video was finding the behind-the-scenes photographs documenting the animation process frame by frame of the game's opening. Animated by the incredibly talented and famous Production IG, these images provide an inside look not only at the animation within the opening, but a look at the animation industry as a whole. As seen here, an in-between animator drew Sonic speeding towards the camera. This yellow image here, as you can see, adjusts Sonic's drawing overall, providing different hand positions, quill angles, and slight adjustments of the position of the board as well. This was most likely done by the opening cinematics animation supervisor, Kyuji Asano. The animation supervisor's job is to correct in-between and keyframe artists to best represent the characters by making sure everything is on model and overall at the highest quality possible. That being said, given my somewhat limited knowledge of the Japanese animation industry, these corrections may have actually been done by the lead animation director for the project, Itzaru Kawasaki, who holds similar responsibilities as a supervisor, but also controls the overall look of the production as well. Now that these corrections are done, the next batch of drawings shows the final line work for the character. After that, we have these excellent cells of Sonic fully colored in all his glory, which I find doubly intriguing considering this is the first time we're seeing this artwork pre-filtered. One last piece of unfiltered artwork is shown here as an animator works on our computer. Of course, now we have the final frames of the finished animatics, showcasing the blending of art and post-production filters working in tandem to give us one of the most iconic opening cutscenes in Sonic history.
Those animations were freaking incredible. It's so cool that we not only have the correction pages of animation, but seeing the team actually work on the intro is freaking insane. Atop the sick animation related material, the website also hosted a ton of other stuff, showcasing each of the characters sorted by their types, also describing each of the characters and their respective stats. As an example, Jet for Sonic for speed, Knights and Rouge for fly, Storm and II for power, etc, etc. This, along with some pretty neat action shots of the characters doing tricks, showcasing the stages and different environments, like this one of Tails on Green Cave, this cool screenshot showcasing 4-player split screen, oh how I miss you nowadays, Amy screaming at Sonic in Metal City, or Jet grinding on the wall in Night Chase. Those grinding sections are just so cool in that level. They also showed off these really neat pictures of the game being showcased as a playable GameCube demo for the audience at an expo. These pictures come from what is translated here as the Sonic Riders booth report, which is where Sonic Team was showing off the game at the 23rd Next Generation World Hobby Fair that happened in February of 2006. The World Hobby Fair is basically a giant E3-like convention in Osaka, Japan that sponsors video games and toys. A lot of the big gaming companies like Nintendo come and showcase their upcoming or recently released products there. At the 23rd World Hobby Fair, Sega also showed off Sonic Rush, Shadow, Riders, and some other recently or soon to be released games. We were able to find this out thanks to SNA's translations and Sonic Stadium's archives on the event and connecting 2 and 2 together. These all show different angles and scenes from the expo, with some of these showing off that huge Riders banner in the background. They even had pictures of the lines leading up to the demos, as well as some close-ups of the demo itself, and a little piece by Takashi Yuta. Atop that, they even had a little promo for Riders' banging soundtrack, with the track list and that huge green button, which I'd assume leads you to purchase the OST. Anyways, it was also pretty neat as it seemed they got some manga artists to draw some art to celebrate Riders' launch. These are—
Hey Eldarin, do you see that?
What, that adorable chibi Sonic?
Yeah, but look at that signature, Mashima. Wait a second. Yes, that's right. It seems Hiro Mashima, the manga artist who created Fairy Tail, drew a little art for Sonic Riders. This comes from what seems to be a collaboration interview with Mashima, where he discussed a bit about his thoughts with Sonic and drew a cute little chibi Riders Sonic. We even have a translation regarding the bit of text here, thanks to SNA. Mashima describes Sonic in a comedic tone, discussing things like a gas pedal and turbulence, likely referring to the air mechanic in Riders. This other interview was done in collaboration with another manga artist, that being Sakawa Tari. In her interview, she describes her experience with Sonic briefly, calling him very cute and loving his design to the point of calling him Kawi Sonic-kun, according to SNA.
Atop that on the website, they also had a little page to show off the strategy guide, along with a link to the official Sakyo Koryaku strategy guide, which might sound familiar if you watched the Shadow video, as they also did the Shadow strategy guide, with some of the concept art from that game actually coming from the book. The Writer's Guide was also published by Shogakukan, which also published the good old Sonic the Hedgehog manga and its multiple publications in their learning magazines back in the day. What was also kinda neat, at least I thought, was the SRTE team even had a screenshot of the Amazon page for the Writer's Strategy Guide, going for a whopping 780 yen, or $6.86 in US currency. Alright, so you want to see some more cool stuff? There was something in here I found really neat and gave me hard nostalgia vibes of when I was growing up on the Sonic Channel and Disney Channel website, printing stuff out to draw and create it. Those being these printable paper crafts of Sonic and Jet along with their extreme gear. Starting with Jet's personal board being the Type J, where you can print it out and fold it to make his own board. And what's even cooler about this is there's a little prop-up Jet printable that you can make that also comes with a stand for his board. I mean, like, how cool is that? We also have one for Sonic here and his blue star as shown on screen. This too came with a pop-up of Sonic's character art and a little stand for his board. I know it's small, but it really just puts a smile on my face seeing this. It reminded me of back in the day going on like the Sonic Channel and doing the Sonic X puzzles or the Lilo and Stitch Flash games on the Disney Channel website, or one I vividly remembered being on the Nickelodeon website, which had something similar to these paper crafts, except you would make your own SpongeBob out of an actual sponge. Honestly, I'll probably end up printing these out myself. The final section from the website, which I'm not really going to cover in too much detail, was it had a bunch of wallpapers and renders of the characters that was used for the promotional art of the game. It's still pretty cool seeing this stuff on here nonetheless. Some of my favorites were these two wallpapers of Sonic and Jet, as they just look cool as all get out, along with some wallpapers of their 3D renders being shown off here. And finally, this is really great looking piece here of Team Sonic and the Babylon Rogues together on a wallpaper. Definitely some cool stuff from this section and the website as a whole. Remember that one port of Riders we were going to discuss later in the video? Well, what if I told you Sonic Riders was going to have a Game Boy Advance port? Yes, that's right. And while not too much is known about this port, we do know that Backbone Entertainment, who would go on to make the Sonic Rivals games, was working on this port. Information about it surfaced in 2014 from two previous employees of Backbone Entertainment, those being artists Arvin Bautista and Keith Erickson. Erickson described this game more in depth on his portfolio, describing how the port was going to use a similar game engine to Sega AM2's arcade racing game Outrun, and why it got canned, stating, "We were doing a GBA port of Sonic Riders for Sega USA on a pretty tight schedule. And when Sega of Japan saw the game and insisted we add some 3D to it, but still keep the same production schedule, Sega USA canned it. There was no way we could rewrite the engine and add all the features necessary and still have it on store shelves the same time as all the other ports. Still, Sega liked what we did before they killed it, and it got us some more work with them." Erickson later went on to say he mainly cleaned up the 3D renders for this project, but shared an original animation he made for the Sonic Riders GBA game. I also imagine the some more work Erickson is describing would end up becoming Sonic Rivals, as Backbone Entertainment would develop that too for 2006 PSP release. Bautista also showed the game on his resume, being the lead artist of the project, along with the GBA Lilo and Stitch game that I played the crap out of when I was younger. He would discuss the game quite a bit on Twitter, where he actually showcased the start screen he made for the then titled Sonic eXtreme, not to be confused with Visionscape's title. On Twitter in 2019, Bautista would later clarify that this Sonic eXtreme was just a working title and would turn into Sonic Riders GBA. He also clarified a bit more regarding Outrun and its correlation with the Riders GBA port, saying how they were just trying to reskin the GBA port of Outrun to make Sega's deadline. Bautista also shared the original drawing, both lined and colored, of the intro screen with Sonic doing a trick on his board. It's also kinda neat how Bautista's version has a unique twist on the rider's shoes, especially with the white tongue at the top and the heavy tread on the bottom. Pretty cool. Per usual, before we finish up, I always enjoy discussing some of the cool miscellaneous stuff and cut content from the game that I stumbled upon while researching for the video. Starting with this adorable little tidbit from the cutting room floor, where in the black market shop, you can exchange your rings to purchase new gear. The camera is traditionally fixed in front of you, so you're facing the Chow head on. But if you unfix the camera and go behind the Chow, you can see its whole lower body is modeled. I just found this adorable as he acts all tough from the front, but you can see he's barely holding his head up above the desk. I don't know, I just found it kind of funny. Another kind of interesting thing in terms of cool stuff in the game itself is that a few months back in January of 2020, the SRTE YouTube channel, Riders Boulevard, found the Sonic Riders test level. This, of course, was used by the developers to test the game while in development. It's just a stretch of green road with some banks and stuff. Per the description of this video, this was founded by SRTE veteran coder Yacker, who is now working on Riders DX. There's a gecko code for Dolphin in the description of the video too if you want to access it yourself. According to the comments, the Riders community always knew about the stage for years, but could never get it to load until now, close to 15 years after release of the game. So this certainly was a pretty big and exciting revelation when the case was finally solved. Link to the video will be in the description. Another small thing I found pretty neat, granted, this could have just been a coincidence, but it's worth mentioning nonetheless, was that in Sonic X, on episode 57, or season 3 episode 5, titled A Chilling Discovery, there actually is a prototype Riders board. I don't really know too much about what is going on here, as I haven't watched all of Sonic X myself, but it seems the Metarex shoots the board and Sonic rides on it for a bit doing a few attacks. Also, I'm only going to show a screen cap from the episode so the copyright ninjas don't come after me, but it definitely is kinda neat. This episode first aired on October 8th, 2005, around a month after the announcement of the game in September, so it certainly could have been that Sega wanted them to include some semblance of a Riders board to help promote the upcoming game when making the season back in the day. I have nothing to base that off of course, but it certainly seems likely. That reminds me though, I actually do need to finish Sonic X. Anyways, last but certainly not least, I just found these two pieces of promotional material really cool. Those being a promotional snowboard and a little tech deck-like skateboard for the game. The snowboard has Sonic's front cover pose from the box art plastered on it, and the tech deck with what looks like Sonic grinding on a rail. I thought these were pretty neat, especially the tech deck, as I used to play with these a lot when I was younger. Well guys, that's going to be it for this video. I have fallen in love with Sonic Riders as of late, although not playing it much when I was younger, even though I did love all of the Tony Hawk games back then. It really is perplexing to me why Sega just up and dropped the Riders trilogy. It seemed like the perfect fit for a Sonic racing game. I want to give a huge thank you to It's Nick for Short for helping me out with this video. It was an absolute pleasure to work together once again. Nick makes phenomenal game analysis videos on Sonic and more. I also want to give a huge thank you again to the Sonic Riders competitive Discord and their project team for being kind enough to get into contact with me and provide material for the video. 1.4 just released, so make sure to check that out. Also, shout out to the Extreme Gear Labs Discord for their phenomenal work on their multiple Riders projects. Both communities are doing God's work in keeping the series alive, so definitely give them support. As I said prior, their Discords are in the description. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe, and with that, I will see you guys in the next video. See ya!